Good evening, everybody. It's Lorraine, Alternative Homesteading, on March 21, 2025. Now, I'm going to discuss a topic that it's not very pleasant, but it is a character trait that many narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths possess that we need to be aware of. Especially as targeted individuals, as targeted people, people on a watch list, people being harassed, being tormented by witches, by cults, Masonic lodges, contractors, private contractors, former military infra guard, fusion center operatives, some of the above, all of the above, your neighbors, etc. Every person that is targeting you possesses certain personality traits, most of which are very useful in harassing an individual. Most normal people, I'm going to use that word very deliberately, most normal people don't want to wake up in the morning knowing that they're going to torment and ruin somebody's life. However, there are individuals that are very sadistic. It's one of their inherent personality characteristics. So the topic for this evening, let me just maneuver this a little bit, is on sadism. The sadistic personality, the history, the psychological underpinnings, the psychological characteristics. And I'm going to go from being very simplistic to discussing a peer-reviewed article that I have here that's, research oriented and more, more detailed. Okay, so you might want to pull up your chair and get a cup of coffee or whatever it is that you drink and settle in, because I believe it's going to be long. It's going to be something you'll need to consider and think about. And what better time of the year than the spring equinox? You know, when witches come onto your property and smear blood on your security door. And yes, I have photos of that on my homepage under the post. Sadism. What is it? Deriving pleasure from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation on others. It has a deep historical and psychological roots. So let's explore these origins, the cultural expressions, the psychological underpinnings, and its connection to secret societies, cults, and societal dynamics. And I'm just going to add that I believe that and I have had this belief for at least a dozen years before I became targeted, that we are creating a society of narcissists to create a society of psychopaths. It's not the topic for this video, because I could literally spend an hour discussing how it came about, why, etc. But we're not going to go there. We're just going to focus on this underlying dynamic of sadism. In ancient practices, in ancient civilizations, there were rituals involving pain and sacrifice. They were often believed to appease the gods or test spiritual endurance. Cultures like the Aztecs performed human sacrifices, while the Romans enjoyed gladiatorial combat, showcasing a socially accepted form of sadism. Then, of course, the medieval period. During the Inquisition, there were witch hunts that reflected institutionalized sadism, where torture was used to extract confessions or enforce religious orthodoxy. And now in modern times, in recent history, sadism found expression in war crimes, authoritarian regimes, and certain subcultures, including those within secretive groups and cults. And that would include secret societies. So what are some of the psychological underpinnings? And again, this is going to be very on the surface because we're going to dive a little bit deeper when we get into the peer-reviewed article. So there is the inherent personality trait and the learned. So it's inherent, born with, or learned behavior. Sadism is typically a learned behavior. It's sometimes rooted in personal trauma, conditioning, or desensitization. Some theorize that a genetic predisposition toward aggression could play a role, but environmental and experience are key factors. So think about growing up in one of those families who are secret societies, who do perform rituals, who ritualize their kiddos. They may be inherently programming their children to enjoy sadism because it is inflicted upon them very early in life, and then conditioned to being sadistic in the future. So then there are the personality disorders. There are sadistic tendencies that are associated with antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and psychopathy. These individuals may lack empathy, seek dominance, and derive pleasure from gaining power over others. You know, that narcissist grin when they know or think they're of the misguided belief that they're getting over on you, but they've got a secret. They've got a dark secret over you. So they give you the smirky grin. Now, the rise in sadism today, there's the media saturated with violence, along with increasing anonymity online, which has normalized dehumanization. There are power dynamics in political and corporate environments. Power struggles can lead to a culture of psychological warfare and emotional cruelty, often masked as competition or strength. Then, of course, there is the gaming community. Imagine, and honestly, I've never played one of those games. I don't play those games. I have no interest in playing those games or gaming or any of those things. To me, it's just a waste of time. But imagine groups of people, all different ages, but particularly young people, sitting in front of a laptop, a computer, their phone, all night long to the early wee morning hours. And all they're doing is playing games. And some of those games are violent. Some of those games are literally warring against someone. But again, it's all on the computer. It's all on the scrolling screen. But these young people become desensitized to violence, desensitized to harming others. Oh, it's just on the computer. It's just a game. But it's not a game, because people who engage in these gaming games fall into an altered reality. And they're literally engaging in antisocial and violent behavior through a game. Oh, it's just a game. Again, that could be a topic for another day. Then there are the secret societies and cults. They control through fear. Many secret societies and cults use sadism as a tool to instill fear, break down personal autonomy, and bind members through shared guilt or trauma. And some of the occult practices, the groups embrace rituals that involve pain, sacrifice, humiliation, believing these acts grant them spiritual power, enlightenment, or loyalty to the dark forces. Is sadism at the core of Satanism? Well, in society, you need to watch for power imbalances where humiliation, control, or cruelty are normalized, whether in the workplace, institutions, or personal relationships. And in groups, be wary of any organization that demands secrecy, that enforces strict hierarchies. You know, like those Freemasons. You know, 1, 2, 3. Go up the ladder, and then you become the 33. They demand secrecy, enforce strict hierarchies. Oh yes, they're like some stupid worshipful master. I don't know. There's only one worshipful master, and he's called God. Not Satan, not Lucifer, no dark angel, no Freemason. I'm sorry. Especially no men wearing little aprons. The only time a man should be wearing an apron is in the kitchen or at a barbecue. Just my personal opinion, and this is for educational purposes only. They normalize abuse. They disguise it as tests or rituals. They play with words. In order to understand this, not all the satanic practices involve sadism, but modern satanic groups do focus on individual empowerment and philosophical rebellion. However, the dark cult circles, the darker occult circles, those rituals involve pain and suffering and symbolize dominance over the life and death, aligning with sadistic tendencies. And I listened to a testimony of Bob Marley's daughter named Zara. And she was actually explaining that between the ages of 14 and 16, she was S-age. She was abused. And she went into great detail about what they do. It's actually horrific. And she did write a book. I don't know the name of the book. You can look it up and perhaps read more about it. But she was talking in regard to P. Diddy, who I really have no interest in at all. But I'm always interested to hear about the life that somebody led as a child, what they endured, what they experienced, what their parents were like, what their home environment was like, to cause somebody to be so disgusting as an adult. I always want to know. I'm curious. How does this happen? So unfortunately, Zara said, and she says, I'm not saying that what he did as an adult is right, that he had a choice to do what he did. But she explains that as a 6-year-old, that little boy, P. Diddy, that little boy was used as a ritual altar. That they would wrap him and he would be flat at 6 years old, horrified as they brought sacrifices that they did on his stomach. And this didn't happen only once or twice. It happens a lot. I can't think of anything more horrific to destroy a child than to use a child as an object and perform rituals to destroy another child. I think it's absolutely disgusting. Makes me sick. But there are families that do this. There are cults that do this. secret societies. That involves Satanism and sadism. They want to justify it as a ritual to give up to the gods, when it's just their disgusting psychopathy. We need to shine the light on these disgusting behaviors by supporting whistleblowers and amplifying survivors' voices, and pushing for legal accountability, because I posted a video the other day. Is Scientology a religion or a cult? And many of these groups twist the words. Oh, we're a nonprofit. Oh, yeah, we're a brotherhood. We're a religion. No, you're not. If it's done in secret, you've got these stupid hierarchies. You think you're God. There needs to be accountability here, and it needs to be exposed. Sadistic people are not necessarily inhuman in a literal sense, but their lack of empathy and pleasure in others' pain sets them apart psychologically. This is why targeted people, it's so hard to wrap our minds around the things that these people do to us. It's incredibly psychologically abusive. And I'm going to say, if the goddamn intelligence agencies are concocting these little plots and plans and skits in the fusion centers, well, then these people need to be exposed too. If they want to do it on their enemies in other countries that we're combating war against or something, although I don't necessarily think that that's a wonderful idea either. There are different ways of dealing with enemies. But to do this on the American people and other people around the world, for fun, for laughs and giggles, it needs to be exposed. Sometimes, though, they're set apart psychologically due to some trauma, as I just mentioned, with these ritualistic families, conditioning, or sometimes there are neurological abnormalities. Sometimes there are problems like that. There are individuals who, let's say, in childhood, maybe they grew up in poverty and didn't have good medical attention. And they may have had a very high fever. And this is very indicative. Having a very high fever in childhood can cause neurological abnormalities if it's not attended to. A child not being able to eat for extended periods of time. This can certainly change the brain. And their behavior reflects this profound disconnection from compassion and moral boundaries. So let me get on to the next one. So let's dive a little deeper into the warning signs of sadistic behavior. 1. The enjoyment of others' pains. They take pleasure in witnessing or causing physical, emotional, or psychological suffering. 2. Power and control obsession. The constant need to dominate conversations, decisions, or social situations, using humiliation as a tool. They frequently use mockery, insults, belittlement to degrade others, often disguised as jokes. Dehumanization. They view people as objects, tools, or obstacles. They lack empathy for others' emotions or suffering, and it escalates over time. Sadistic behaviors tend to intensify, progressing from a little minor cruelty to more extreme acts. Many sadists can be superficially charming, using manipulation to hide their darker tendencies, and that's very similar with a malignant narcissist. They can be very charming, like Ted Bundy, right? Now, here are some historical case studies. The Roman Colosseum in ancient Rome. The Romans normalized public executions and gladiatorial games where crowds cheered as people were torn apart by animals or forced to fight to the death. Thus, institutionalized sadism was part of societal entertainment. Then there was the Spanish Inquisition between the 15th and 19th centuries. Torture devices like the Iron Maiden and the rack were used to extract confessions, often under the guise of religious purification. The systemic infliction of pain became a sanctioned form of control. And then, of course, there's the Nazi human experimentation in World War II. Dr. Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, conducted horrific experiments on concentration camp prisoners. His lack of empathy and enjoyment of cruelty exemplified institutional sadism. Then there was a Stanford prison experiment in 1971. Philip Zimbardo's psychological study revealed that ordinary people, when given unchecked power, could become sadistic, like your neighbors. Volunteers assigned the role of quote-unquote guards quickly escalated their abuse of prisoners. Then the modern examples would be in the corporate and workplace abuse, where sadistic bosses may humiliate employees publicly, create impossible workloads, or pit team members against each other to assert dominance. Online harassment, so cyber stalkers. Internet trolls display sadistic traits. They find pleasure in provoking emotional responses, spreading false rumors, and causing distress. And we can't forget the law enforcement and military abuses. High-profile cases of police brutality often reveal individuals who enjoy exerting power over others under the protection of authority. Like in the name of national security. Then, of course, there are the cults and secret societies. Group like I don't know how to pronounce the name of this group. NXIVM, use psychological manipulation, sexual coercion, and branding rituals under the guise of quote-unquote empowerment. Leaders exercise sadistic control over their followers' lives. Now, in order to spot and expose sadism, you need to trust your instincts first. If someone is consistently making you feel unsafe, degraded, or powerless, take those feelings seriously. Observe the patterns. Sadists rarely target only one person. They thrive in environments where their cruelty can be spread. Document the behavior by keeping records of abusive actions, messages, or conversations, and confront. In numbers, sadists lose power when they're exposed or confronted by groups of people. Speak out. Use social media, legal channels, and community responses to shed light on hidden abuse. So I asked Chatgpt, is sadism the root of Satanism? And even Chatgpt says, this is a complex subject. It's a complex subject. Not all forms of Satanism involve sadistic behavior. Modern satanic groups like the Satanic Temple focus on personal autonomy and resistance to religious authoritarianism. However, in darker occult circles, rituals involving pain, sacrifice, or humiliation may play a role, but not necessarily as a core tenet, but as a method for exerting power or exploring taboo experiences. So now we're going to get on to the psychology behind sadism. So, and after I read this, we're going to get into the peer-reviewed article, which is a little bit more detailed. So we're going to dive into the psychology behind sadism. Well, one, why does sadism manifest in certain people? There's the lack of empathy. One of the core traits of sadists is the inability or refusal to empathize with others. This emotional disconnect allows them to inflict pain without remorse. Neurological studies show that some individuals have reduced activity in the brain regions responsible for compassion and empathy, making it easier for them to dehumanize others. Some of these individuals crave power and control. Many sadists are driven by the need for power. Inflicting pain, emotional, psychological, or physical, gives them a sense of dominance and superiority. The thrill of control often becomes addictive. I'll repeat that. The thrill of control becomes addictive, pushing them to escalate their behavior over time. Then, of course, there's the childhood trauma and conditioning, and this could be in those secret society families, those families where this is done generationally. Some sadists experience severe neglect, abuse, or exposure to violence during their formative years. And in these environments, they may have learned that power comes from cruelty, and then they perpetuate the cycle as adults. Desensitization, exposure to violence, whether through media, real-life experiences, or participation in toxic social circles, can desensitize individuals, making cruelty seem normal or even entertaining. There are the dark triad traits. Many sadists exhibit traits from the dark triad of personality disorders. That is narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Narcissists crave admiration and superiority, and Machiavellians, they love to manipulate others for personal gain. And psychopaths lack remorse. Combined, these traits create a dangerous blend of a cold-hearted, cruel person. Cold-hearted cruelty. Now, for some, inflicting pain or fear, it gives them an adrenaline rush. They're thrill seekers. Adrenaline junkies. The psychological high reinforces their actions, pushing them to seek out more extreme scenarios. Then there's the ideological or group influence. In secret societies or cults, sadism may be ritualized, normalized, or framed as a path to enlightenment, loyalty, or power. In these settings, individuals become embodied and emboldened by group dynamics and lose their moral compass. So how do you protect yourself from sadistic individuals? You trust your gut. If someone makes you feel uneasy or unsafe, don't ignore those feelings. Sadists often test boundaries to see what they can get away with. Set firm boundaries, because sadistic people, they will push limits to exert control. Establish and enforce personal boundaries early. Don't tolerate degrading comments or subtle power plays. Avoid engaging with these people. Sadists feed off of emotional reactions. Don't argue, plead, or try to understand their actions. The less you engage, the less power they have over you. Document everything. If you're dealing with a sadist at work, in your neighborhood, or online, keep detailed records of their actions. Save emails, record dates and incidents. Gather witness accounts if possible. This evidence can be crucial for legal action or public exposure. Surround yourself with allies. Isolating victims is a very common sadistic tactic. Build a support network of friends, family, or trusted community members who can validate your experiences and help you stand against abuse. Know when to walk away. In personal relationships, the only real solution may be to cut ties entirely. Sadists rarely change, and trying to fix them is dangerous. If harassment or abuse escalates, seek a restraining order, workplace harassment, or involve the law enforcement. Yeah, well, good luck with that. Sadists often rely on their victims' silence, so speaking out can disrupt their power. And empower yourself with knowledge. The more you understand these sadistic behaviors, the easier it becomes to spot red flags and defend yourself. Awareness is a powerful shield. So I'm going to move on to, where is it? Here is my, okay, so I've got the PDF. It is called The Psychometric Investigation of the Assessment of Sadistic Personality by Rachel A. Plouffe, Martin M. Smith, and Donald H. Saklovsky, the University of Western Ontario. The Assessment of Sadistic Personality. This is the abstract. The study reports on a new measure of subclinical sadism. The assessment of sadistic personality, we investigated dimensionality, invariance, and convergent validity of ASP using a sample of 638 Canadian university students. Confirmatory factor analysis supported the factor structure of the ASP, which is the assessment of sadistic personality. The metric invariance was supported and consistent with past findings. Evidence for scalar invariance was not found, with men scoring higher than women on the ASP and short dark triad. The ASP correlated in expected directions with the dark triad and the hexago traits and the personality inventory for the DSM-5 variables. Validation of the ASP is important to assess how sadism relates to both general and pathological models of personality, and to inform clinicians and researchers of socially malevolent behaviors that can be predicted using the ASP. Findings suggest that the ASP is a concise, unidimensional measure of subclinical sadism appropriate for use in research settings. So some of the key words that they used here is sadism, dark triad, tetrad, personality, psychometrics, and factor analysis. So basically what they did is they focused on the dark triad of personality, which includes 3 malevolent traits: psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. The subclinical psychopathy refers to the dispositional tendency to be deceptive, impulsive, and show an inconsistent lack of empathy for others. Subclinical narcissism is the tendency to possess a grandiose sense of entitlement, self-involvement, and exploitative dominance. Machiavellianism is characterized by deceit, strategic manipulation, and a lack of concern for conventional morals. Recent research supports the inclusion of subclinical sadism to form the dark tetrad of personality. Subclinical sadism is the dispositional tendency to engage in cruel or antagonistic behaviors for pleasure or subjugation. And the conceptual similarities exist between sadism and the dark triad. They're both related to the negative pole of honesty, humility, and each demonstrates a proneness towards aggression. Providing support for sadism, in addition to the constellation of malevolent traits. Sadism, however, predicts important outcomes beyond the dark triad, such as cyberstalking. You hear that? Sadism, however, predicts important outcomes beyond the dark triad, such as cyberstalking. Moreover, unlike individuals in the dark triad, those exhibiting high sadism engage in intrinsically motivated aggression for enjoyment rather than for instrumental gain or as a defense mechanism. So they basically do it because it brings them joy. They get off on it. Sadism is positively associated with 5 facets of the personality inventory for the DSM-5 brief form. And here are the 5. Psychoticism, antagonism, negative affect, disinhibition, and detachment. Psychoticism, antagonism, negative affect, disinhibition, and detachment. These relationships are in keeping with common descriptions of sadism, including impulsivity, recklessness, unprovoked hostility, and emotional detachment. Negative relationships also emerge between sadism and the 6 traits of the Hexaco personality inventory. That includes emotionality, agreeableness, conscientiousness, honesty, humility, and extroversion. These relationships are unsurprising, as individuals high in sadism tend to be uncooperative, low in empathy, withdrawn, and engage in antagonistic behaviors for pleasure. They engage in antagonistic behaviors for pleasure. Past measures of subclinical sadism, though useful, reflect narrow item content and repetitive wording, which limits correlations between external variables. Let me just scroll down here. This is like all statistical stuff. Let me scroll down. They're talking about a hypothesis, the method. And we're going to go scroll down. This is all statistics now, which I am not going to get into the statistics here. And let me just scroll down a little bit more here. They anticipated that sadism would be positively correlated with psychoticism, antagonism, negative affect, disinhibition, and detachment. Consistent with prediction, psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and sadism showed medium to large positive correlations between antagonism, disinhibition, psychoticism, and detachment, demonstrating that each of these traits possess an underlying, emotionally callous, erratic, and emotionally detached character. Narcissism, however, did not correlate significantly with disinhibition or psychoticism, indicating that narcissism may be considered less socially aversive than the other tetrad traits. None of the tetrad traits correlated significantly with negative affect, consistent with the view that individuals exhibiting dark personality characteristics tend to not experience negative emotions following engagement in antagonistic behaviors, meaning when they're antagonistic to other people, they do not receive negative emotions. They tend to feel joy. So let me just scroll down here. Okay, so I'm on page 12 here. This is all their references now. Okay, so that's that with that article. I've got one other thing to read here about how to expose sadists publicly. Exposing sadists and healing from their abuse. It's a journey that requires courage, strategy, and self-care, but you can reclaim your power. Exposing them publicly, you need to gather evidence. Keep detailed records of every incident, including dates, times, descriptions of behavior, and witness statements if possible. Screenshots, audio recordings, photos, and saved messages serve as undeniable proof. Identify patterns. Sadists often target multiple people. Talk to others who may have experienced similar behavior. Collective testimonies are hard to dismiss. Use public platforms. Social media can be a powerful tool for exposure. Share your experiences with factual, concise statements. Use hashtags to raise awareness and connect with others facing similar situations. And one of the hashtags might be hashtag expose the abuse. And the one that I've been using is hashtag real estate mobbing. Contact the authorities and media. If sadistic behavior involves illegal actions like harassment, stalking, and assault, report it to the authorities. Local news outlets or investigative journalists may be interested in covering the story, especially if others come forward. That's why we kind of need to band together and help each other in these situations. You can host community meetings or online forums to spread awareness and gather allies. There's strength in numbers and helps prevent retaliation and increases its credibility. Then, of course, there's anonymous whistleblowing. If direct confrontation feels a little too risky, consider submitting anonymous reports to the HR department, licensing boards, or watchdog organizations. Then you can take legal action. If cases in workplace abuse, property sabotage, or physical harm, a legal action can provide not only justice, but public exposure through court proceedings. Acknowledge the trauma. Allow yourself to grieve. Being targeted by sadists can be profoundly disorienting and painful. Accept what has happened was not your fault. Cut it off. Cut off all contact. Sadists will often try to reassert control if they sense you're pulling away, like moving. Block their numbers, emails, and social media profiles. Don't give them a way back into your life. Rebuild boundaries. After enduring manipulation or abuse, your sense of personal boundaries might feel eroded. Take time to redefine what you will and will not tolerate from others. Seek support because trauma can be isolating. If you're not alone, reach out to trusted friends and support groups. Seek therapy, especially from a counselor experienced in narcissistic abuse recovery. Reclaim your narrative. Writing about your experiences, whether privately or publicly, can be cathartic. It allows you to process what happened and rewrite the story as one of survival, not victimhood. Empower yourself with knowledge. Learn about personality disorders like narcissism, psychopathy, and sadism. Understanding the tactics used against you demystifies the abuse and reduces the lingering fear. Trauma can dim life's pleasures. Reconsider hobbies, interests, activities, and places that make you feel alive again. Surround yourself with positivity and light, and celebrate your resilience. Surviving a sadist games means you endured something profoundly dark, but you emerge a wiser and stronger person. Think. And let me scroll down here. I think, I posted this already on the community page under a post. I created a call to action social media post exposing the darkness to raise awareness about sadistic abuse. So that is on my community page. It is a post from yesterday, the day before. So once again, this topic was about sadism, the psychology behind sadism, exploring ways to protect yourself from sadistic individuals, how to expose sadists publicly, and the warning signs of sadistic behavior. So this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. On this topic, I'm going to end for now. Please remember to hit the thumbs up and feel free to share this information, because what you are experiencing with the quote-unquote gang stalkers, the community-based agents, the people that are harassing and stalking you, the underlying dynamic to a lot of this is that they get pleasure from harming you. They get pleasure seeing a reaction. They're sadists. I'm going to sign off for now.